Hello, I'm Andy Brown. I'm the editor of International Construction magazine, and I'm joined by Peter Comstock, who is the Senior Director of Legislative Affairs at the Associated Builders and Contractors, otherwise known as ABC. How are you, Peter? Thank you for your time.
Good, thanks for having me today.
Perfect. So we're very happy for Peter to be joining us, and you're joining us to talk about obviously very big news. President Biden's 1.2 trillion infrastructure bill has now been signed. I wonder if you'd just be able to outline for us what you see as some of the key components of it.
So yeah, we see fairly significant investment in our nation's infrastructure, kind of a once in a generation investment in infrastructure. Right now, we are excited about the opportunity that is available to the construction industry to help truly modernize our nation's infrastructure. As something that's been needed over these past few decades. We're right now looking at how this is going to be implemented. I know the president focused on that in his remarks yesterday, appointing the former New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu to kind of lead this task federal agencies to implement this bill. And so we're hopeful to work with them and talk about the importance of this investment and focus on where ABC members can provide the most benefit.
Great, thank you. So yeah, you kind of mentioned the word kind of modernize there. I just kind of wonder, I mean, there's been kind of various reports about the state of American infrastructure, most of them not particularly positive. I just kind of wonder kind of how badly needed do you think kind of this bill was?
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to our nation's roads, bridges, and highways, this kind of new federal investment, along with this 1.2 trillion is 550 billion in new investment, and then the other is in kind of the existing programs. And this will be over 8 years. This spending. So we're focused on some of these. Our hope is to focus on these long-term projects, things, highways, roads, bridges that we've seen facing deterioration over these past decades, and kind of the much-needed fixes that need to be done there, along with things like expanding broadband and other energy proposals that are in the bill as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And one of the things that kind of caught my eye was I think Biden said he wanted to make sure that the US has the cleanest, safest, and fastest rail system in the world, which might be a touch ambitious. But I kind of just wondered, do you think the US could see strong growth in railway construction in the future then?
I think that's probably a question for the railway associations. What we're focused on, a lot of ABC, a lot of what our members do is kind of the infrastructure, construction, some roads, bridges, and then kind of the building infrastructure, things of that nature. But I think the focus on modernizing our nation's transportation system is key to making us be able to have a successful economy and continue to grow our nation's commerce. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and obviously you've kind of worked in kind of this area before in terms of what you do. I kind of wonder, how soon do you think then the impact kind of might be felt, and I suppose what kind of might contractors in America do to try to kind of tap into these kind of government contracts that presumably are going to be available?
Yeah, well, I think that's a very good question. I think it depends on the administration. One of the things that ABC did have some general concerns with was kind of the broad discretion that were given to our federal agencies on implementing these projects. Our concern, of course, is making sure that all qualified contractors are able to bid on these contracts as they go out. The Biden administration has focused heavily on union jobs and providing union jobs through this bill. Our concern with the rhetoric that we're hearing is that there are 87% of the construction industry that choose not to join a union. And how are they going to be able to bid on these projects? Our small businesses, our small contractors in participating in these programs. So I think the impact of this bill will heavily rely on the ability of all qualified contractors and all of America's workers to really work on these projects for the betterment of their communities and then the betterment of our nation and in our economy.
Okay, great, thank you. And that kind of ties into kind of another question I had, I guess, which is, I don't know, do we think, I mean, might it be a problem for the industry to meet this new demand kind of we hear a lot about kind of like the skills shortage, and it's kind of harder and harder to hire people. All of a sudden, you might have this big bill available, kind of lots of jobs, but is the workforce going to be there to be able to do it?
Yeah, I think that's something that ABC has focused on a lot in kind of upskilling and educating the workforce and getting more individuals into the construction and trade industries to have the skills that they need to participate in these jobs. You know, in the construction industry, we have over a 400,000 worker shortage. So that's something that certainly needs to be addressed. It's something that ABC and our members have been working on. There is a provision in this bill that Senator Jim Inhofe included that was part of kind of the surface transportation reauthorization aspect of this bill that does expand a federal grant program for states, kind of gives more flexibility for them to allow for grants to fund workforce development, specifically in the transportation infrastructure realm. So we were happy to see that language in the bill, and I think Congress needs to continue to focus on this kind of workforce development aspect and showing that we need to have these skilled workers in these positions to really have the ability to do these jobs and complete these projects kind of on time and on budget.
Okay, great. And I know we sort of touched on it briefly before, but just in terms of a kind of a time scale and in terms of kind of, if you could just sort of hold my hand and kind of walk me through it, like kind of say the bill's been signed now, what actually happens now? What are the next processes, and when you kind of might be start to see some of these contracts being awarded, or what's the process?
Yeah, I think that's something that this task force that President Biden named Mitch Landrieu to, along with this Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. You had the Energy Secretary, Granholm there, and then I know Interior is part of it, Ag, Labor, and some other federal agencies, that they're going to really have to spearhead this and get this ball rolling. I think our view from ABC and kind of the role that we'll be playing is certainly advocating for, again, all qualified contractors to be able to bid on these projects, because we think that's going to be the most effective and kind of quickest way to get the best results. And then focusing on, of course, these long-term projects that are most beneficial to our economy and the needs of our transportation infrastructure. So yeah, I think that's the question for kind of that task force, and we're looking forward to see what they kind of roll out with and what their focus will be on.
Okay. And just to me, from someone in the UK, the bill just seemed to be a big win for kind of construction. We touched on a few things, but I mean, is there anything that you wish it perhaps had focused more on, or anything that you think it should have touched on that it hasn't?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the rhetoric, again, as I said, on kind of the union job aspect. We would have preferred some language in here. There's something called a project labor agreement that is essentially a pre-hire collective bargaining agreement that usually focuses on union employers and hiring from local union halls. That really does prevent a lot of other qualified contractors whose workers may have decided not to unionize from bidding on these projects. We would have liked to see language in this bill that essentially stayed neutral on the issue of PLAs, said if you want to bid with a PLA, you can. If you don't want to, you can. There's going to be no mandate or requirement for it or encouragement of it. Unfortunately, that language wasn't in there. There isn't any mandate language in there as well. But our concern is what the administration can do from their standpoint on implementing these kind of what we feel are restrictive labor requirements that will not only limit the ability of contractors available for these jobs, but also increase the overall cost of these projects. So we would have liked to have seen some stronger protections there in the bill.
Okay, great. And just my final question really then is kind of a slightly kind of broad one, but kind of using the infrastructure bill as maybe a kind of a jump off point. Kind of how would you assess the kind of the short term and maybe the medium term prospects for the construction industry in America?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a significant investment. I think some of the stuff that we're concerned about right now are certainly supply chain issues, workforce issues, as we mentioned earlier, really needing to focus on those aspects of construction. I think this significant investment could be a real boon for construction, not only for now, but well into the future. Just all depends on how how it's implemented. We're looking at this as an opportunity. We are looking at this as a true, kind of the best of what bipartisanship can bring through legislation. We don't love everything in it, but there is some really good stuff in there. One of the things I failed to mention, kind of the streamlining of the permitting process that can really help speed up the ability to move these projects through and get them approved and done in a timely manner. That's a crucial part of this bill and something that the previous administration and previous Congress had focused on in their legislative efforts. So that's what we're looking forward to, and hopefully we can work with the administration and Congress to really get this bill to be a huge success.
That's great. Pete, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.